So my name is Jaime, that's how you write it, Jaime, like j'aime in French, so love. And Hayón, I live in the sea, so that's my last name. Sorry for not being Fernandez, Gonzalez, or something else. My parents were really confused about the last name, but anyway, that's our last name. I think it was changed by Inquisition or something like that. That's what they said. But anyway, my work's about furniture, it's about design, it's about making art. So, and these two images kind of say who I am. So Jaime, I love what I do. Hayón, in the beach, the sculptures, the furniture, that's what I do. So that's it. My conference is over. Thank you very much. So, okay, so I'm going to show you a million things. So prepare yourself for it. 1, 2, 3, 4. I do artworks, product design, interiors, and experiments. Obviously, everything is about experimenting at the end. No matter what, I could have put that into one and only one number. What I did at the beginning was starting to do installations. It was the way to start. Very confused about the profession. I come from Madrid. I didn't know what to do when I finished. I finished in Paris. I went to Madrid, then Paris. And I didn't know what to do, but the first thing I did was start to make installations. So I did things like these. This is a cactus. I was doing a lot of graphics, so I did a lot of ceramics at the beginning. The ceramics were very interesting for me because it was an easy way to do things that look like they cost money. It was, in reality, it's earth on water. So I always thought that ceramics could have been, a nice material to start. It's easy, it's cheap, and you don't need so many scales, to work on it. So what I did is try to invent my aesthetic in which I use the graphics I do, plus the worlds behind the things, and try to make these kind of pieces. The funny thing is that everyone that was near me, like teachers and so on, they were looking at me going like, this really doesn't work, Jaime, because this is not functional. Like, a table with so many legs, like you cannot put a chair on it. And I said, well, I'm not trying to do anything functional, actually. So I'm a bad designer, actually, or at least I was there. But I was trying to figure it out how, storytelling and history and things could just influence what you're doing. So I just went to the British Museum and I saw those beautiful Egyptian things. And I just came out with this kind of production. At that moment, I lived in Barcelona. And I had people asking me the most strange things. Like this is for a company called Bizazza in Italy. They just came out and said, hey, can you use our mosaic material into something? And I did a plane, and I called it the installation jet set. It was a complete crazy way of looking at it. A few years ago in London, I had the opportunity to have a commission by the city during the design festival. They asked me to do something public. I did an installation in Trafalgar Square. And there, I've realized that it was really funny that they asked a Spaniard, which actually lost the Battle of Trafalgar, to make something in Trafalgar Square. So that was really good. And we lost the battle, and Spain became really bad. The whole empire went on. And but I thought it was interesting because, being in Trafalgar Square, I thought, if I could make a chess game, it could be interesting because it's about strategy. And that's why, the English and the French, kind of won the battle. So this was the whole concept about why did I make this kind of installation. So I placed a giant chess game in Trafalgar Square, hand-painted myself. I got so tired of doing it. It was very complicated, and did it very, very kind of like for fun. And then, things started to happen. People called me to do installations. I wasn't at all having anything related to functional. This is actually quite a funny project. I did it for the electricity company of Italy. It's called Enel. And I was so naive. This sketch you see there is what I brought to the big bosses there in the table. They were 24. They looked at me going like, so what's your project about? And I'm like, I'm going to make a circuit. And like, I don't know if you see the thing. It's like you're going to the energy company of Italy, and they're all looking like, a circuit? That's like, what's that? And I said, yeah, I'm going to make an installation that is going to be a circuit. It's just going to go like, and I showed them that. And then I really made it, in reality. So what happened is that you got these lamps, and they give energy. There's these vases that turn, and these vases just, sort of make a breathing thing situation with the LEDs. And what happens is like those lamps that are made in ceramics, they give to that table energy, and that energy is passing to a cabinet which has a lot of propellers. And these propellers are turning, and they're just coming back to the table. So it was quite fascinating. I was always interested about things people don't like or don't want or find completely kitsch or terrible, because I think there's a lot of inspiration in those things. And explore always by doing things, thinking about themes. I worked on an American theme. I thought it was interesting. I made a project called American Chateau. So I did this furniture, which is based on Miami. It's called New York is Miami. Did this hot dog. This was the funny one, because this was, it was a completely ridiculous thing. But the funny thing is, like, I went to the guys that make the McLarens and all that, and they were super happy to see me. I just arrived there, and it's like, well, I have got a project, and I would like to work with you. And so I went to this factory in which everybody's like super German, like with all the white, like they look like doctors. And they were like, oh, so you're bringing a project like Mr. Stark. What kind of job are you going to do? And I'm like, no, I want to make a sausage. And so they looked at me going like, a sausage? I said, yeah, this kind of sausage. So they did my sausage, and Hermes did my saddle. So it was, it went to sort of extreme crafts, and there was this association of, like that little smile there that the sausage has is actually a nod to Dali, it's holding the movement. So it is absolutely, again, a non-functional piece. It's just an observation about, what is in America about, I made this limousine table, which was quite fun to do with very nice American oak. So for me, the design at that moment was just to try to understand materials, understanding how things were working. I was trying to bring my sculpture scales to it. And I've understood that the limited work just teach me about materials. Suddenly, this was my first design. This is like 12 years ago. I designed this bathroom. So somebody that looked at my sculptures and thought that I was good at ceramics, he said, why don't you make a bathroom for us? So I made that console, and that became quite popular. Suddenly, I was in the design museum and, about function. The thing is, like, I didn't know what I was doing. I was, like, completely out of ignorance. Every bathroom was sanitary and white. And then I made it gold and silver and like, with an accent. And, I just thought that it was a theme that you could do something special with. So anyway, after that, a lot of people called me. I made lamps. They always had a reference on history. They always had something that was interested. And by the years, I started to get very inspired about things that I like, and I just put them aside and look at them once in a while. So for me, I always work with images. I remember the cabinet, the table you saw before, which I did for the biennial in Portugal, ended up being my first design piece. And this is because somebody that was editing Dali's furniture just saw my table, which is absolutely not functional. It was done by everybody sent me, I asked a crowd like you guys, like my friends, I just said, hey, send me the leg you have in your house, just like so the design was completely irrelevant for me. Like, I just made it because of a lot of influences and people. So they produced my first industrial, let's say, product. So since then, a lot of things happened. Different companies asked me also to do functional design, so I started to make chairs. The funny thing is that I've always been a little bit of Dr. Jekyll-Mr. Hyde. On one side, I have my own planet. On the other hand, I feel that design should say something, it should be interesting materially, should be nicely done. Whatever I did was always trying to understand the material, understand how things are done, trying to get into details of things. And no matter what, I was just trying to learn by doing. I think I was always very passionate about that. The funny thing that turned my career more interesting is that suddenly very serious design companies, such as Fritz Hansen, which is a very serious company in Denmark, asked me to design furniture for them. And I remember the CEO asking me, so, Jaime, what are you up to? And what is your next project? And I said, I'm doing a green chicken rocking chair. And the guy was looking at me like, and this guy's going to design our next sofa? It was a little bit like crazy because they've been always very rational. The thing was that what I understood is that when I do furniture, I really like to do it very well. So I tried to analyze what they were good at upholstery, good at detailing. So I made this first, let's say, sofa, which actually became quite interesting for the Danish progression on design, Out of there, companies from different places were calling me, not only galleries, so I worked with Crystal and, work, always trying to get ideas very quick. Like, this is funny. This is actually one example of how my mind works. I see a stick. Somebody asked me to do a lamp, and I said, well, why not get inspired of different sticks, then you get different lamps, It's really, really easy. It's really, trying to work with an image first. This lamp is called America, It's like a boat leaving, yeah? So you see that it's really simple. Sometimes I work with companies that make things that are just nearby. Like, I live in Valencia now, in the coast of Spain. We do something called rattan. So here it's my interest of trying to investigate how you can get the peeling out of the rattan, yeah? So I made a new system in which, like, the rattan could update itself by looking more elegant. It looks a little bit more special. This is a chair called frames. And obviously, the old men in the city, in the villages, they use them now. They see something new with it. So anyway, so always something visual, something around us became creativity. For me, like for example, this arpa became the the inspiration for this type of chair you see that I made for a company in London. One image, one inspiration, one material, you get a result. It's always very interesting how people are trying to do a lot of intellectual thinking and trying to go very far away to get their inspiration. For me, the inspiration was always something related to a theme, but also related to construction today. You visually see these, and this is a chair called Catch. And in reality, it's a chair that is really trying to catch you. I mean, you see, this is exactly... So I look at that image, I went to a place, I showed a penguin, and I did a chair. Any of these images would already make you imagine what the chair could be like. Then obviously, it has to be comfortable. So I thought about making it very, very nice and that it holds you well, that is ecologically made, whatever. So that came after. So for me, first of all, is to get where the inspiration comes from. Then it starts the creativity. Then the project happens. This chair that I make for Fritz Hansen is called Ro, which is, tranquility, whatever, in Danish. But the inspiration was the column. I said, if you can look at a chair from behind and already feel that it's going to be comfortable without even sitting on it, already we will communicate something. So with that and the fact that I wanted to make something sculptural, very thin, very nice and elegant, both things together made it become, well, right now it's kind of a classic now for Fritz Hansen. It's been for a while being a very important piece in their collection. And the nice thing of it is that at the end of the day, it's just a very, very simple concept. It just evolve with trying to make it in a way that it was honest. The funny thing of this piece, even though it has a lot of detail, I tried to make this piece just also not only think about the idea, but also going to the atelier and trying to shape it as a sculpture. So on that side, my whole artistic background just came back. Then obviously I work on the colors and I work on all the things and the proportions. This is like a low version of it. And I try the things, I put them in my house, try to see if they work. So in the last years, I became more designer than ever. Suddenly, I really like to make these functional things. The thing is that all that got me into interiors. Because suddenly they say, hey, you've made your art stuff, your installations look like I could have a restaurant inside, and why not doing that? So I've discovered that restaurants could be quite interesting, or making, working for hotels and stuff. It could be quite an interesting progression to what I'm doing. Sometimes, obviously, you become like this kind of magician, like this was the restaurant before. So it was like, this is 10 years ago, actually. And, it was a restyle, so I tried to invent my own type of column. Like the guy was like really proud. He was like, Jaime, you have to do something here. We have this Corinthian or whatever column. What do we do with it? And suddenly, I just realized that I had to redesign the aesthetic of the place, thinking about creating my own type of column. So I made a Jaime column. So that's the one. And design everything around it, everything became an excuse to make new things, all the handles and all the doors and everything around the place. For me, it was always an excuse to create innovation. So, a new chandelier will appear because I had high ceilings, or like a new chair had to come into something. So suddenly, the press and the people started to speak about your work. I come from Madrid. There's not like an incredible tradition of design in there, but they start to speak about, suddenly you're relevant. You're making something interesting. So people started to speak about the work I was doing, and they started to get more commissions and things happening. So everything was really hectic, trying to build manufacturing together with, trying to bring also like the fun in the work. So every time I had an interior to do, a project to do, it was always about experimenting. So things came really quick. And I always felt that it was more important to do the things and mistake by doing them than really trying to research too much about it. For me, it was always like quite interesting. Said, like this guy said, hey, how do we make order in this table? I said, like, just put a hole. So the shoe is always straight. So you have these sort of ideas, and you propose them, and you don't wait for somebody to do it before you. Just go and do it. So for me, it was always this idea of going straight forward to it and not having any problem to go and say, use my art table into your thing to put the shoes, or whatever. For me, it was always very important to be pretty random in the decisions and very intuitive to whatever came around. So in all these years, I've been working in many different countries. I've been working doing these interiors, doing obviously these installations, which always came out. And sometimes an interior was even more interesting than creating an installation, because I've learned, by using the budget of the client, how to express myself, So, this is the jewelry I made, and it was quite interesting, a jewelry store. It was quite interesting how every furniture in the place, every detail, was actually, an experimental thing. For example, this kind of like really long furniture to put the jewelry was quite interesting. Suddenly, like this long thing, like quite on the edge. It was quite interesting to experiment with it and try to bring something forward with all the experiences. So for me, as I said, everything becomes an opportunity. Everything that it's around you becomes definitely something you can learn from. And as I said, sometimes you become a little bit of a magician. I mean, imagine when the client in Paris, he told me, you have to do a restaurant that looks good with these. I mean, look at it. I mean, think about it. I mean, are we magicians or, I think it's very complicated. So, and the guy was like super happy. He was like, I have this place in Paris, it's beautiful. Like, look at it. And I'm like, where is beautiful? I mean, how do you take it? I was like, somebody asked me after I visited this place, he's like, are you really going to do a project? And he was so chunky and so fucked up that I said, it's impossible. But then I realized something that is so bad that I got actually inspired about it because I saw these medieval things and middle-aged stuff. And it reminded me that maybe if I would keep that, I could style it quite interestingly. So that's what I did. I started to bring up the news to the place, trying to bring, like the inspiration from everything I found in the place. So, I kept the mirrors. There were these mirrors. There were these masks. So I sort of got inspired to make new ones. I created those lamps that created the stability on the place and quite an interesting lighting. And got inspired. It was like a canteen. So I kept this sort of look, keeping the rocks in there and making in Murano some of the mirrors. So, I just got inspired of that chunky place to make a new place. Huh? So you can do that in design, I guess. So anyway, thank you for the applause. It feels good. It's like, So anyway, everything is, as I said, an excuse, And sometimes of course, I made a lot of disasters. I think I fuck up a lot of economies and in between other things I do, sometimes it really doesn't work, but it doesn't matter because I learned by doing these things. So, I said to my client, hey, don't put legs in this furniture, but that was too heavy, so it didn't work. So, but I photographed it before it fell. But, so that's kind of, so sometimes they, oh, that's really nice. How did you hang it? And I was like, I don't know. So. So I don't know, I just try to do things like that. So this was a collaboration I did for Mini, for the BMW design team. I worked with them on urban perspectives last year. And sometimes I feel like even something really commercial as I think I showed you for the energy company in Italy, could be something fascinating. So these guys, they were, shall we work together in some car or something? And I said, no, let's work in something else. So I sort of like the skates. And so I created this story in which inside you could, inside of this installation that you see, you could see all the sketches and all the things I created around this idea of movement. And obviously, at the end, what I created was a lot of elements that could become something on mobility. And, like jackets and these kind of different things and work with materials. And at the end of the day, I designed this skate, which actually was extremely well done. It was really fun, actually. It really worked. It was really interesting to see how these companies are really seeking for people that have no barriers to think, because they're so marketing-oriented that they need this sort of, external relation, like in the example you showed with Volvo the other day. So I did that with them, and obviously it was really funky, the thing. So there's some important things for me. So one is exploring tradition. So one of the things that I think is relevant is like sometimes you see something really chunky like this glass, but I've always felt like this was an opportunity to work on something new. So I worked with Baccarat, which is a very old company in France, and try to do things that they would never do. So combine other materials with glass like ceramics and things you would use in stoves, and created a whole collection around that. It was my first collaboration with them. Try to explore that glass is crystal is a very interesting material. When you start to cut it, you start to get reflections. It becomes very interesting. So I was always very, very inspired by, the object should be not just a collaboration, but it should be an installation. It should be an exploration of the material and try to learn by doing. So for me, this was one of the projects like that. And, a chandelier that has 250 years old can become something new, suddenly by just redoing the technique of it. But I've understood that these techniques that are there, that are in the past, they can become the future of things. Like this is a guy that makes terracotta nearby where I live. And I just work with him because he always made the same pottery. So I said, why not making something new with your material? It's very warm and nice. So I work with him on that. And so every time I get a project, there should be a challenge behind. There there should be something to say. So history is also another important fact. I remember I did this collection called New Roman. So I just looked at the Roman Empire and, this is actually quite interesting. These Romans were so intelligent, but nobody put a base on the bases. They always were, it's crazy. Like, why didn't they put it flat? They're always like round. So it is quite interesting. Like they invaded all over, almost to Asia. But they didn't do a flat vase, They always had these things floating. So I got inspired by that to make a collection out of the Roman inspiration. So I used glass and ceramics and metal to make it happen. So what I'm saying is that you don't have to go so far to get your inspiration. I just think you have to just open whatever book. I always say that an encyclopedia is probably the best and most interesting book ever because you just open any page and something will happen. Sometimes in this profession, I get weird commissions. This is Le Corbusier, and this is the mother of Le Corbusier. As you all know, Le Corbusier is a very important architect. This is very interesting because Le Corbusier made a house that is called Villa Le Lac. And Villa Le Lac has a tree. And it's the first example in architecture in which like a house is built around a tree, which was planted specifically to make a natural roof to it. Okay, so I get a phone call in the middle of Christmas time. I'm just enjoying a football match, Real Madrid-Barcelona, which is a heavy one. And these guys, they're calling me, and it's like, we are the Le Corbusier Foundation, and we want to talk to you about a project. And I said, like, well, tell me. And they said, we have a tree which Le Corbusier planted, and we want to give it to you. Because they have to cut it because he's sick. So imagine the architecture. You suddenly, like, this is a very important example of architecture, but the tree has to be chopped off. And they're giving me this tree, so I'm saying, kind of out of the blue, okay. But then obviously the tree is really big, where do you put it? And, these kind of things, the problem starts. And then I came out with one solution. I said to them, why don't we they told me, let's do something with the tree. First they said, we want to do pencils. And I thought it was really not interesting. So I said to them, let's think about who's going to miss the tree. So I said, the kids, because they cannot hang their, thing. And, let's do birdhouses out of it or something like that. So I thought about those other persons, not persons, but persons and others that could miss it. So with that, I created that with the original wood. And then I got inspired of the architecture of Le Corbusier to create other things, which were sculptural pieces which had a function. So I called them functional sculptures based on theories that he had, or that forms that were interesting, mixed up with some Hayón style thing. So I came up with this kind of collection for Casina, which actually produced it at the end, which actually edits the Le Corbusier furniture. And as I was into the architecture, I said, well, why not looking at Barcelona? So I looked at this kind of architecture, which is from Gaudí, and realized that I could make also a symbol to it and create my first plastic chair, which I never made before, called Mila, which is basically based on that kind of architecture. So I always thought that whatever's surrounding you, whatever is around, becomes an excuse to make something new. And this is what is interesting in this profession. It's like it's always in front of you. You just got to look with it with a third eye. Mix things that are not possible. Sometimes I use technology and handmade work to make things. This shoe, which I make for company Campa, shows it all. It's like you use a high-tech sort of like injected molded technique and then handmade Italian way of doing shoes to put it together. So, this combination of the old and the new makes it into an interesting shoe suddenly. I made also the winter version, that's the one. And same happened when I had to make a cell phone. I mean, I'm no Apple, at all. I have no idea about technology. I don't use it. I use other things. They call me the biggest multinational in Japan to think about a new phone. And you know what the guy said? I had the idea when I was in the tower, but it was terrible, so I didn't say anything because they were paying me really well. But I already had the idea of what to do. Because the guy said, Jaime-san, we lose all our battery looking at the clock. And I said, really? Okay. So then I had the idea that I had to make a phone that had to have a clock already incorporated in it. A clock in which when the battery is off, you can just look at it, anytime. So you don't need to plug it in all the time. And also, they said that they made their economy out of like personalizing the phones. So I don't know if you noticed, but before, every phone had a little hole to put things. And so I did two holes, one with the clock and one with the, with another hole in which people could personalize the phone. So at the end of the day, I sort of went back instead of going ahead to find a future solution. And the funny thing is like you're going back to a gentleman gesture, which is to look at your clock again. So suddenly something really high-tech, which doesn't have personality, becomes something personal. So that's what I think is interesting, when you can really play with this kind of thing. I feel responsibility in the way we work. I work with porcelain. This is a company called Yadro. It's super old school. My friends thought that I was crazy when I started to work with them. They make flowers and all these kind of, funny things, like very cheesy. So I worked with them, and it was like an Almodovar movie, Like you just start to work with them, and you realize these figurines are extremely amazing because it's not about designing them. It's about a movie, You sort of think, these things speak about love, and they speak about fraternity and these kind of things. And I was very interested in the fact that suddenly, these things need lamps, and they need aesthetics, and they need shoes. So I used everything I was doing to make these family portraits. So I make these kind of figurines. So I made the lady how I liked it, And it's like a little bit of a scene of my house, Like the father is looking at the little boy that wants the toy. So as I said, it's like a movie. You suddenly realize that the porcelain can become something else. So my thing was always about to look at things that are a little bit lost and try to bring them with these crafts and extreme crafts into something else. How manga could be the next porcelain to be collected. So I was comparing German porcelain and manga and trying to bring manga people into porcelain. So in the way I thought, it was always this kind of association into trying to bring a new fantasy, something different to that type of world. Also, something I like is exploring the process of how we design. Before, people used to work much more near to the artisans. And, I said to myself, I have to change the way I'm working. So this chair, for example, which is called 22, which has 22 pieces of wood, I made it in Tuscany, just going to the atelier, no drawings, nothing. Just going to the place, working with an artisan, just some wine, some prosciutto, and working in every break to put it together. It was put together completely out of passion, just like trying to see how these bones will work, how do we put it, we assemble it, and we process it in a completely different way. So the way things are done, it's also part of the job. Oh, by the way, you see the calendar, there's always these ladies there, bringing the good energy in these ateliers in Italy. I don't know if you noticed. It's quite interesting. So, suddenly this chair was elegant, was beautiful. It was not made by a computer anymore. It was made by people. So sorry for going so quick, but I have a timer here that is like a nuclear bomb. It's going to go boom. And so the moment I get out. So the next thing is to explore new techniques. This is called a piña chair. I made it for Magis, so you can see the association, the net and the piña. It's quite an interesting technique, but what happens here is that the chair they loved it, but it was very complicated to be done, so many weldings mechanically. So I sort of looked at another type of technique to solve it. So I look at the fences, how they're done, and we did the opposite. We welded first, and then we molded. So suddenly, by looking at another context, you get a new idea. So this is how this chair became then a production chair. So I'm sure you're looking at the lady now, looking at my technique. Anyway, the piña became a successful chair because of that. And same happened with this company. This is a company called Say in London. These guys just started a company. They didn't have so much budget, and we needed to make this table, which comes out of a mold in one piece. Okay, these molds come from recycling airplane molds. So there's always solutions in which you can just look at something and try to bring it to another context. It's a beautiful table because it comes from one piece. The investment of making that mold would have been something like 500,000 pounds, but they couldn't pay it, so they just went to the air industry in which these molds are recycled to make these type of things. So for me, exploring new worlds, that's why I'm here, to learn about cultures, to go around. It's something really relevant. I'm all the time thinking I have to travel and I have to visit. So when I knew everything about porcelain, I went to Japan and I tried to learn also about their porcelain, the way it's done. So traveling and seeing and learning by doing and exploring techniques, even if you know them, for me has always been something very interesting. In Japan, this collection became quite interesting. That's a typical situation there, by the way, the tea. But it became really interesting for me to see how they are using the brushes in a different way, how they are having a discipline which is very different than the one I used before. So, when you think you know it all, the best thing is to start from zero again. So this is exactly why I'm here, because I've learned a lot of things yesterday and today by looking at other people's work and understanding that everyone has a story and everyone has something to say in a way or another. So many things. This is this is actually African. And I got inspired by these monkeys to make this monkey table. Yeah. And it's quite interesting. It's like thinking if to serve you or not. It's kind of... So the humor is also a very important part of the work. I always remember that the first time I was in Milan, all the designers would dress in black. Now I'm kind of black, but normally I'm not. But I thought always that it would be interesting to really try to make something that people would not expect, So I think the inspiration and to go along with themes, it's actually what brings that up, and also to have the humor behind things. This is one of the latest projects I did. It's about sports, so I got inspired on different sports, really easy. Again, opening the encyclopedia, and trying to bring that to another context. So I did an exhibition about it and worked with all the elements to create different functions with a design gallery in Paris and London. So, everything you do at the end, anyway, for me, it's not about high technology or anything. It's about trying to tell visually story on what you're making it. And when it's ridiculous or it's like the sausage or whatever, when it's completely out, and can be even almost like a joke, when you use extreme materials such as marble, ceramics, glass, things that are handmade, then you find something. And for me, finding something is what I'm about, I remember that what I'm looking at the end is to try to remember that at the end of the day, I have my own fantasy. I have a graphical world. I have a lot of things around me that influence me. And everything has to be just put in different formats without even thinking about categories. So I never really thought how the designer should look like. I dressed myself. I went from glass to crystal to ceramics to all kinds of different materials. Never thought how to define myself. People were asking me, so what are you up to? Are you a designer? Are you an artist? What do you do? And I'm like, I don't care. I'm just a creative person and just put ideas in there. And I don't mind if tomorrow I'm going to do, I'm going to be a cook or I'm going to be an architect. I don't know. What I know is that whatever I do will be made to explore and to go into passion about things. And, is that curiosity and that sort of exploration, that naivety sometimes, that sort of looking at the world like a child, is what brings at the end to the design I do something which maybe is a little bit different than others. So, this is how I portray myself, I made it into a Financial Times cover like that. And my brother, which is a banker, he didn't. It's just quite interesting. So the bomb is going to explode very soon. So I'm trying to, this is really the Speedy Gonzalez, presentation. It's like ta-ta-ta-ta-ta. Anyway, so this is Jaime, and, Jaime has a lot of faces. So this is serious Jaime, and then this is the other Jaime, with my green chicken rocking chair. So this is the cover of the exhibition I have touring the world right now. It's in Holon in Israel, and it was in, before that, it was in the Netherlands. So, both things, as I said before, Dr. Jekyll-Mr Hyde, furniture, functionality, beauty, elegance, and nice things we're learning by doing, plus that grain of giving your intuition to the design. It's what I like. And I think that's what I would keep doing in the next years, is trying to explore more. And not even if now things are getting more serious, at the end of the day, this is my life. I sit on the table, I put the things I like behind, like as if they were ingredients, and try to think about what's next. I think we live in a beautiful profession in which creativity gives a lot of good and positive energy. So for me, once in a while, I'll do a message. This is a sculpture I did for positive thinking. It's a bird that is standing up and it's looking at the horizon, trying to think that things could be better in the future. So I call it the hope bird. And this is how I want to finish before I go, because the bomb is already there, man. I can see it. It's like, get out, So anyway, I thank you so much, Ravi, designing Indaba. I love, having, coming back here. It's fantastic. It's beautiful. And I love the wine and everything around it. And thank you so much for your attention. And that's it. Yeah, thank you.